Do you ever feel like a ghost in the machine of your own life?
You're not a boomer clinging to the old ways.
You're not a millennial, fluent in the language of constant content.
You're the generation in between, the so-called forgotten middle child. You're the one with a key around your neck in your memory and a smartphone in your hand today. You built the bridge to the modern world, and now you watch everyone else drive across it like they paved it themselves.
Ever wonder why you're so fiercely independent? Why you can smell corporate nonsense from a mile away?
Why your first reaction to any new hype is a world-weary sigh and a quiet, "We'll see." These aren't random quirks of personality. They are forged psychological traits, scars from battles other generations only read about. This isn't just a list of your characteristics. This is the operating manual you were never given. It explains the source code behind your skepticism, your resilience, and your quiet competence. The world may have forgotten you, but you were busy learning a different set of rules. And today, we're going to decode them one by one. Welcome to the real psychology of Generation X. For decades, the narrative has been dominated by the seismic cultural shift of the baby boomers and the digital native rise of the millennials and Gen Z. Gen X was often treated like a demographic placeholder, a quiet intermission between two headline acts. But what if that intermission was actually the most critical period of psychological development in the last century? What if being ignored was the very thing that made you so incredibly resourceful? In this video, we're going beyond a simple list of traits like cynical or independent. We're going to connect the dots, linking the formative events of your youth directly to the way you think, work, and live today. To do that, we'll explore 4 core psychological archetypes that define the Gen X mindset. First, we'll examine the independent survivor, forged in the fires of empty homes and institutional failures. Then, we'll decode the pragmatic realist who learned from economic recessions that loyalty is a one-way street. After that, we'll celebrate the analog-to-digital bridge, the unsung superpower of your generation. Finally, we'll understand the skeptical optimist who uses a cynical exterior to protect a core of get-it-done idealism. By the end, you won't just feel seen, you'll have a new framework for your own experience. You'll understand that you weren't forgotten, you were in training. So, grab your coffee, put on your metaphorical headphones, and let's get into it. Let's begin with an image that is almost a cliché, but is in fact a psychological cornerstone: the key on a shoelace around your neck. Imagine it's 1987. School's out, but your parents are both at work, and they will be for hours. There are no play dates on a calendar. No helicopter parents checking in. There is only you, the key, and the quiet, empty house. This daily ritual wasn't just about letting yourself in. It was an education in radical self-reliance. You learned to solve your own problems because there was no one else around to solve them for you. Hungry? You learned to navigate a kitchen and maybe bend the definition of balanced meal with some creative cereal combinations. Bored? You learned to entertain yourself for hours with a book, a bike, or the burgeoning universe of cable TV and video games. Psychologists call this a high-contingency environment, where your actions have immediate and direct consequences. This forged a deep-seated belief that you are your own safety net. But this independence was reinforced by something much larger. Think back to January 28, 1986. Many of us were sitting in classrooms watching the Challenger shuttle launch, promised a spectacle of progress and hope.
And then, in 73 seconds, we watched it explode. We watched the adults in the room, our teachers, stare in disbelief, their own faith in institutions crumbling in real time. This wasn't just a national tragedy. For a generation, it was a foundational lesson. The lesson was this: institutions can fail, experts can be wrong, and the promises of authority figures are not guaranteed. It planted the seed of skepticism that would bloom into a core Gen X trait. You don't trust grand pronouncements because you saw the O-rings fail. This created the independent survivor, a person who is resourceful, adaptable, and inherently skeptical of anyone promising a perfect launch. You learn to expect the unexpected, and more importantly, to depend on yourself when it happens. Your parents weren't home, the shuttle exploded, and you learned to make your own damn dinner. This is not a flaw. It's a survival skill that you mastered before you even had a driver's license. This independence wasn't just a personal trait, it was an economic necessity. You are on your own. It's why you can handle a crisis without needing a committee meeting. It's why your first instinct is to try and fix it yourself before you ever think to ask for help. This is the bedrock of the Gen X psyche. You are the result of a generation-long experiment in unsupervised learning. The result is a graduate with a PhD in reality. Now, if the independent survivor was forged in the home, our next archetype, the pragmatic realist, was forged in the marketplace. As Gen X came of age, they entered a world where the post-war promise of lifetime employment was spectacularly imploding. You grew up watching news reports about corporate downsizing, hostile takeovers, and the recessions of the 80s and early 90s. For many, this wasn't just on the news, it was happening at your own dinner table. You saw your boomer parents, who'd given 25 years of loyal service to a company, get a pink slip and a gold watch that wasn't even real gold. You watched as the social contract between employer and employee was systematically shredded. The psychological imprint of this was profound. While boomers might ask, "What can I do for the company?" and millennials might ask, "What can the company do for my career growth?" Gen X learned to ask a much simpler, more direct question. What's in it for me right now? This wasn't selfishness, it was a rational response to an unreliable system. Company loyalty was dead, and Gen X attended the funeral. In its place grew a transactional relationship with work. You work to live, you don't live to work. This is why you have such a low tolerance for corporate rah-rah meetings and jargon-filled mission statements. You heard the promises of "we're a family" and then saw the family members get fired to make quarterly numbers. It's the "where's the beef" of corporate culture. You're not interested in the sizzle. You just want to know if there's any steak. This pragmatic realism means you value competence above all else. You don't care about someone's title, their office, or their loud proclamations of genius. You care if they can do the job. And you apply that same ruthless standard to yourself. You might not talk a big game, but you deliver. The pragmatic realist is the ultimate show, don't tell employee. This also explains the Gen X approach to money. You saw boom and bust cycles early, so you're cautious. You save, you invest, but you also harbor a healthy fear that the rug could be pulled out at any moment. This isn't pessimism, it's what psychologists call defensive pessimism. You anticipate the worst-case scenario, not to wallow in it, but to prepare for it. This makes you incredibly resilient. When a crisis hits the fan at work, who's the calmest person in the room?
It's often the pragmatic realist who has been mentally rehearsing this exact disaster for a decade. Your practicality is not boring. It's a superpower forged in the fires of economic uncertainty. You don't buy the hype because you've learned that hype doesn't pay the mortgage. This realism is what prepared you for the single greatest technological shift in human history, leading us to our third archetype, the analog to digital bridge. This might be the most misunderstood and most valuable aspect of the Gen X psyche. You are the last generation of humans to have a completely analog childhood. You remember a world without the internet, where research meant encyclopedias and the Dewey Decimal System. You remember having to memorize phone numbers and the satisfying clunk of a rotary phone? You made mixtapes from the radio, a painstaking process of art and timing. Your brain was wired in a world of scarcity, patience, and physical media. But then, just as you were entering the workforce, the world changed. The dial-up modem shrieked its way into your lives, and you were the generation tasked with making it work. Boomers were often intimidated by the new technology, while millennials were too young to be in charge. So you were the ones who set up the first office networks, designed the first clunky company websites on GeoCities, and taught your bosses how to use email. You became bilingual, fluent in both analog and digital. This is not a trivial skill. It's an incredible strategic advantage. You can understand the linear, patient thinking of the analog world, and you can navigate the hyperlinked, instant gratification landscape of the digital world. This makes you an invaluable translator. You can explain to a boomer executive why they need a social media strategy, and you can explain to a Gen Z intern why a detailed, step-by-step process document is necessary. You understand the value of a face-to-face meeting and the efficiency of a Slack channel. You remember life before search engines, which means you learned how to think, not just how to look things up. Research shows that effortful processing leads to deeper encoding and better memory. Your entire youth was a boot camp in effortful processing. That's why you can often see the big picture and the underlying structure of a problem in a way that younger digital native colleagues might miss. They see the endless branches of the hyperlink forest. You remember how to draw the map. This dual fluency is your quiet, unsung superpower. The world runs on the bridges you built. It's time you started recognizing yourself as the architect, not just the maintenance crew. You are the vital link, the human API between the past and the future. You are fluent in two worlds that don't speak each other's language. This is why your perspective is more critical now than ever before. This brings us to the most famous and most misunderstood Gen X trait, the cynical exterior. This is the source of our final archetype, the skeptical optimist. The world sees the sarcasm, the dark humor, the eye roll at the latest corporate buzzword. They label it cynicism or negativity, but they are fundamentally misreading the signal. Your skepticism is not a rejection of hope. It's a finely honed quality control filter for it. You've seen too many fads, too many failed promises, too many new paradigms that were just old ideas in new clothes. Your skepticism is the armor you wear to protect a surprisingly resilient core of idealism. Deep down, you want things to be good. You want people to be competent, and you want projects to succeed. Your cynicism is just the rigorous testing process you put hope through before you'll invest in it. Think about the cultural icons of Gen X. Look at someone like Dave Grohl.
He survived the supernova of Nirvana, and instead of burning out, he quietly went into a studio, recorded an entire album himself, and built the Foo Fighters, one of the biggest bands in the world.
That's the skeptical optimist playbook. Tragedy strikes, you don't issue a press release, you get to work.
Or think of Shonda Rhimes, who built an entire television empire, not through grandstanding, but through relentless work and telling great stories. This is the essence of the forgotten middle child thesis.
While boomers were making the rules and millennials were demanding to speak to the manager, Gen X was in the back, quietly building the whole damn store.
Your generation's lack of a loud, cohesive voice wasn't a weakness.
It was a strategic advantage that allowed you to focus on competence and execution without the distraction of constant navel-gazing. You're not loud because you prefer to let the work speak for itself. The dark humor is a coping mechanism for a world that has consistently been absurd and challenging. It's a way of acknowledging the darkness without letting it consume you.
So when you roll your eyes at the latest empty platitude, it's not because you've given up. It's because you're saving your energy for something that might actually work. That's the skeptical optimist, a pragmatist with a well-hidden heart, always hoping for the best, but fully prepared for the worst. If any of this has been resonating, if you felt that jolt of recognition, consider subscribing. We dive deep into this kind of psychological decoding every week.
It's a small click, but it tells the algorithm that this kind of content matters.
Okay, so we've established the why behind the Gen X psyche. Now let's talk about the how. Specifically, how can millennials and Gen Z, who now work with and for Gen X, bridge the communication gap? And for the Gen Xers watching, this is how you can help them understand you. Here are 3 quick rules for effectively communicating with a Gen Xer in the workplace. Rule number 1, get to the point. We just spent 10 minutes explaining why Gen X has no patience for fluff. Don't schedule a 30-minute meeting for something that can be a 3-sentence email. State the problem, your proposed solution, and what you need from them. Rule number 2, show your work. Remember the independent survivor. They trust what they can see and verify. Don't just say you have a great idea. Bring a prototype, a draft, or a well-reasoned plan. A demonstration is worth 1,000 buzzwords. Rule number 3, respect their time and their autonomy. Gen X hates being micromanaged because they were never managed at all as kids. Give them a goal, give them the resources, and then get out of their way. They will come to you if they need you, and the results will likely be better than you imagined. Following these rules shows you speak their language, the language of competence, efficiency, and mutual respect. It's the quickest way to earn their trust, which, once given, is incredibly strong. So let's bring this all together. We've explored the 4 faces of the Gen X psyche. The independent survivor who learned to rely on themselves in a world that wasn't watching. The pragmatic realist who saw the corporate contract break and created a new one based on tangible value. The analog to digital bridge, the vital bilingual translator holding our modern world together. And the skeptical optimist, whose cynical armor protects a fierce desire to see things done right. These aren't separate people. They are facets of a single, complex, and resilient generational identity. If you've spent your life feeling slightly out of sync, like you were playing by a different set of rules, it's because you were. Your traits were not inherited. They were earned. They were forged by absent parents, exploding shuttles, economic downturns, and the screech of a dial-up modem.
You're not the forgotten generation.
You're the keystone generation. You're the one holding the arch together while everyone else is arguing about the architecture. Own it.
Your perspective isn't a relic, it's the bedrock of modern competence. If this video helped you feel seen, let us know in the comments. Share your most quintessentially Gen X story or moment. We want to hear it. Like and subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of our world. Your quiet nod of approval is the only validation we need.